National Treasure trombonist?
No, no, no. I stopped playing the trombone when I was 16.
Oh, what do you play now?
I'm a saxophonist.
He told me you were a trombonist. I'm sorry.
I graduated from college as a trombone major.
Oh, okay.
But then I switched up. No, that's all right.
Too many bios here.
I'm not a trombonist.
Okay, saxophonist.
Saxophonist.
Arranger, composer.
That's true.
Yes, a major contributor to the jazz scene in Denver.
Well, it's because I've been living here a long time.
Okay, fantastic. In what ways is the Denver community unique in regards to our jazz culture?
Our jazz culture? When you say, I'm going to ask you to give me more information. Sure. What is our jazz culture?
Well,
how big is that?
Denver has been noted as one of the major jazz center, despite the fact that we're 16th largest metropolitan area. Mm-hmm. We actually have a concentration of jazz musicians that is not in line with that being the 16th largest metropolitan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah, so in that sense, in what sense is that jazz scene, why do we attract so much jazz talent?
Skiing. Should I look at the camera?
Yes, please.
Look at my top of my head.
I'm going to.
Well, I believe that the climate has a lot to do with it, in that when people visit here or move here, they tend to stay here. I think the young jazz musicians who are coming out of school, they want to go to New York, because to them that's the Mecca and that's where jazz exists. But for the older jazz musician who has been around the block once or twice and has a reputation and has made some type of inroads into the music called jazz, when they come to Denver, I think they look at the locale, and I think they look at the friendliness of the people, and if they're lucky enough to know about the famous Five Points jazz scene from World War II and slightly after that, they see that there is a great tradition of jazz here in Denver.
How can the corporate community support the growth in insurance that jazz thrives in Colorado?
Well, it seems at this point in time that jazz has been declared or relegated, maybe we should say, to the category of art music. It's not a commercial music at this point in time, as it perhaps once was. And like the symphony orchestra, it's now a art music that finds its way into schools. You can now take a course in jazz at a college. You can take a class in playing in a band. You can take a class in jazz history. And these are things that are new in the last 20, 30, 40 years. When I was in school in the 1960s, we weren't allowed to jam, quote, jam in the practice rooms. There was no jazz. So the fact that jazz has made its way into a more academic setting, I think, is indicative of where it needs to be to survive as at least an educational facet, but certainly support from the business community is one of the things that will keep it a vibrant music for the public.
And in turn, how does a rich cultural community support the corporate community?
That I don't know. I won't answer that one.
Okay. What is your vision of the future of jazz in the region?
Well, I think in the region there are many good players. And again, I make the point that we have a young community who tends not to so much want to stay in Denver, but we have a professional community of first-rate jazz musicians who have, for whatever reason, located here. And they want opportunities to perform. They don't want to be scholarly musicians. They want to be part of a community of jazz music. And when we have organizations like the Gift of Jazz, or we have a club like Dazzle, which will support a variety of jazz acts, then we have a chance to have a, quote, vibrant jazz scene.
Can you speak to the distinction between a performance art form versus a recorded art form?
Well, I think a performance art form, as far as jazz now exists, is becoming fairly closely in line to the recorded art form. I hear more and more live jazz recordings that come out on CDs. I think a lot of that has to do with economics. People can have someone come to the club with digital recording equipment and make a pretty stunning recording with fairly simple means. This was impossible 20 years ago when you had to go to a studio. And also, we don't have record companies that are chasing after us to have us record so they can have the next greatest jazz hit. So I think a lot of it has to do with practicality. Jazz musicians are seeing when we go and play live, we are capturing the spontaneous moment that makes jazz what it is, and also we're making it a practical reality.
Is there any other point that you would like to make to the corporate community? You have the floor.
Okay. Well, I'm worried about the symphony. I find that on the radio, on the FM channel, there is a classical station. But when I go to the symphony, and I do quite a bit because I think we have a great symphony here in Colorado, in Denver, I don't see many people sitting in the seats. And that worries me because even though people are coming, maybe a third of a house, sometimes a half of a house, how can the symphony survive? How can they keep going with the budget they need? They have 70, 80, 90 people on their payroll. How can they survive without some type of outside help, corporate help, people with donations? I hope the symphony survives because I think we would be a much poorer place without the symphony. But I think jazz is also in that same boat. I hope jazz survives because of the fact that we don't want it to just go into the schools. We want it to be a community effort. We want it to be something that people can come and listen to in a setting that is appropriate. We don't want it to always be in the back room of a bar or in a cellar. But at the same time, I think as jazz becomes more of a, quote, art music, we're going to need more and more support to keep it alive.
Thank you.
Is that good?
Yes, very good.